We do have some changes, and the impact is some of the calls we get we cannot respond to because it's no funding is there anymore. So some of the people who call us, we have to tell them that we can't come to that call. I know a lot of the police departments that we're working with, they feel it a lot too, because some of the kids that we was going to was kids before they got in trouble with the law. They would call us to go out to talk to them to try to get them to understand where they was heading to. So now they can't give us that call anymore.
Welcome to Shoresides, where we explore the coastal North Carolina region's past, present, and future to promote community resilience. I'm Nicholas Magrino. Up until quite recently, if you were a law enforcement officer in Robeson County, North Carolina, and came across a young person you thought might be caught in a confrontation, bullying, gang rivalry, something that could escalate, you could call Leon Burden. Burden understands how Robeson works. It's one of 3 rural counties in North Carolina's border with South Carolina that consistently reports the highest rates of violence. And Burden, he just might be able to get through to them. Since 2022, Youth Violence Prevention Center staff members like him have been working directly with young people in the community to put a stop to these incidents before they can start. And during this time, complaints involving youth and incidents of youth violence have dropped. Progress. But some of the calls Burton gets are now rolling to voicemail as part of the new political reality. In the wake of a new presidential administration, the center was among 350 organizations the United States Department of Justice emailed in April to say federal funds they'd been awarded were no longer coming, and no longer effectuates department priorities. We'll speak to Paul Smukowski, the center's director, to learn more about these funding cuts and how they will affect the organization's ability to serve their community.
So on 2 sides. One is we have a collaboration with our juvenile court system, and they will divert youth who have had serious offenses like weapons offenses, gang offenses, assault, and they will divert them to work with us, our team, headed by Leon and Wendy Locklear and Mike Brill. And then they will provide intensive mentoring. And then we divert them into skills training. And we also have we're starting to do job placements. So we may place them in a work setting, in a paid work placement, or in a GED program if they need that. So the whole idea is to try and move them onto a different, more positive path. And then some youth have had victimization problems, exposure to violence, and then we provide mental health therapy. About 2/3 of those youth who are going through juvenile court really need mental health therapy, and so we provide that through the grant, free of charge for those youth.
In 2022, the center received a $2 million grant from the Department of Justice, which they used to assist police departments in preventing youth crime. The funding was meant to last until September 2026.
Yeah, the grant that we had from the Department of Justice, we partnered with 4 different police departments within small rural towns in Robeson County. And each of these police departments had very high levels of crime and violence. They were between 2 and 10 times the national average for violent crime. And so these towns were Fairmont, Pembroke, Red Springs, and Rowland. And each of those police departments partnered with us to do directed policing, looking at hotspots, trying to focus on intensive areas of problems in their community. And then we increased their access to victim services like the therapy we just talked about. And then we did outreach in their community, and we had violence interrupters. And that's where Leon came in with working with the police departments. Could you tell?
We walked around in the community If someone was shot, jumped on, beat up, or whatever, we would walk around in the community, talk to them, try to ease their minds so that way they feel more calmer, and let them know that, you need to let the police know what's going on in their community. Sometimes, some of the crimes that we seen in the community is things that we could also go back into the community and talk to the kids that was in gangs or whatever, and they will listen to us. We even worked with the kids that's in the court system. We also help kids find jobs that have that was suspended from school for 365. We would get them a place to go and give them a job. They would go out of town, go to work, come back home every afternoon. Some people would stay here in town and go to work. If they didn't have a high school diploma, we motivated them to go get a high school diploma, and little things like that.
Any progress the program was making came to a screeching halt last month. The Youth Prevention Center received correspondence from the federal government informing them that the money that these programs were supposed to rely on for the next year and a half got cut short.
On April 22nd, I received a termination letter by email. It was not signed by any Department of Justice official. And so in that way, made me believe that it might have been system generated. And it's been widely reported in the news. The Department of Justice cut $811 million worth of grants on that day. And it was crime reduction projects, just like you're hearing about here, across the entire country. So they had said that their priorities have shifted, and they're focusing on violent crime now and protecting America's youth. However, we did write an appeal letter because, as we've been discussing, we have clear data showing that we were working on violent crime.
Before it was cut, this program was making a real impact. Over the last 3 years, teams were able to prevent violent incidents from happening, and that had a significant impact on crime rates in the communities they serve.
So after a gang incident, Leon and my other team members will be out there trying to calm down other gang members so there wouldn't be a retaliatory shooting. And sometimes they would often get tips beforehand about gang violence, for example, that was being planned. And my team has actually been able to prevent some gang fights within public parks. And that's an example. They've been able to talk youth into turning themselves in instead of having a police chase. So for Robeson County, and just as background, Robeson County has the most violent community in North Carolina, you could put it that way. We have the highest levels of violence and crime statistics in the state, and that's been a long-standing problem. So from 2020, when the project began, to 2024 in Robeson County, now this is data from the sheriff's office, there was a 69% decrease in murders, a 59% decrease in weapons offenses, a 45% decrease in burglaries, and a 40% decrease in simple assaults. So you can see across different types of violent crime, there was a significant decrease across a number of areas. And we can't completely say the crime reduction efforts were in charge of all that decrease. However, we can say that was far beyond the same time period. The decrease in North Carolina as a whole was about a 1% change. So here you have a 50% change instead of a 1% change. And we do think our programming had a strong role in that.
Despite the federal government claiming that their priorities had shifted, they cut funding to a program that not only was within the scope of those priorities, but very effective at accomplishing them.
but at the same time, they never asked us anything about the effectiveness of the project. They just terminated the funding, and not just terminating it, but they cut us off from the treasury system to be able to draw down money, which means that we couldn't even be reimbursed for the payroll for those 2 weeks for paying our staff. We are very well within the priorities that they said they had shifted to. And that's what we wrote in our appeal. It just did not make sense. The attorney general went on social media and said no victim services will be impacted by these cuts. But our victim services unit was definitely impacted with the cut of this grant. And our violence interrupters, it was very difficult, but we had to we had to let that unit go. So these services that took 5 years to get up and going and efficient in the community were cut in a day, and it's not that easy to be able to reinstate them.
That appeal letter has so far gone nowhere. According to Smukowski, they have not even received an acknowledgement that it was even submitted. Some aspects of the center's grant-funded programs.
My victim services unit that provides the psychotherapy for youth has funding from other sources. And so we have been able to stabilize that. And we've tried to shift people onto other funding, but all of the federal funding that we have is kind of under siege at the moment. So it's really hard time to be a nonprofit because you don't know what's the next thing that they might cut, and and so it's very hard to plan the future.
Any kid that we deal with now, they have to be in the system, and it's nothing showing prevention for them no more. And I feel that it hurts because of us doing this for so many years that we was always on the move. That if someone call us and say something is some gang stuff in their yard, we could go there and check it out right then. Now if they call, we can't respond.
Smokowski's organization has been working with other nonprofits to try and get the grant money reinstated.
Yes, we've talked to other nonprofits, and there is this network. This was called Community Violence Intervention (CVI), and there was 300 grants across the country. So there is a network that is trying to advocate for reinstating these grants. There's some legal action that's being considered. Whether this was done the proper way, and that's a separate issue for the courts. And we've been trying to raise awareness. There's been a day of action that was last Saturday, and people protesting.
Fortunately, local politicians seem interested in getting the Youth Violence Prevention Center funded again as well.
So we've been trying to raise awareness through our website and talking to our legislators about this. What it looks like is that it's really important that the North Carolina legislature, which is planning its budget now, will hopefully take up some of this cause in the state budget in order to help nonprofit like ours to really survive this kind of cut.
But what has become increasingly clear to Smokowski is that his organization's relationship with the federal government is going to change going forward. He will need to find new sources of funding.
So the thing is that doesn't make sense is not only will this impact the community in potentially increasing crime because we were preventing it, but it also put people out of work who were really devoted to this area. And that last point is really hard because this is hard to build but easy to destroy, because nonprofits don't have an endowment or a big source of funds to be able to float payroll. It's kind of living reimbursement to reimbursement. And so what that means is it won't take long for the network of nonprofits to unfortunately collapse if they are dependent on the federal funds. And I just think that that's very sad, especially since they didn't even check with us on what kind of effectiveness we were seeing from the grant.
We was at a point where kids didn't have to get in trouble. Their parents could just call us. The police can just call us and say, I need you to go over there and talk to little Michael. And all we had to do was get the address and go. But now they don't have that no more. So 9 times out of 10, we would see the crime rate go up real high because now it's the summertime. And what happens in the summertime when kids don't have anything to do? They go out and commit crime. But we're not talking about little simple crime. We're talking about violent crimes that we're going to see these kids involved in. And then who do we go and say, who's responsible for it? Now they can't say the North Carolina Youth Violence Center. They can't say Colors of Light. So who do they say? Is it the community? Is it the legislation? Is it the judges? Is it the police officers? Who do they call and say they're responsible for what happened to us now?
I want to give you one clear example of what Leon is saying. For the last 4 years, we have partnered with Leon's nonprofit, the Colors of Life, in order to put a summer camp in place. So all summer, it was for youth who had had adverse childhood experiences. And they would come to camp, and we'd give those who needed therapy. We had arts, we had athletics. It was a very dynamic camp. With the cut, we're not able to offer that this year. So last year, for example, when they were in camp, two of the campers, their home was shot up from a gang incident.
Yes.
And they were not there because they were in camp. If they had been there, they probably would not be with us anymore. And that is an example of what will not be here because in our community because of the termination of this grant.
From Shoresides, this is Nicholas Magrino. Learn more about Shoresides at shoresides.org. Thanks for listening.